Okay, my phone is being terrible as usual. Samsung garbage, so I'm not sure if this will work, but here's give it a shot. This is from excerpt from my book, The Beautiful West, which was the ancient Egyptian name for America, Amentet Neferet. And I just previously, my previous videos, I was dealing with the section about the Hierakonpolis map, the 5,500-year-old map of America. But now I'm going to the next oldest maps that I know of. Like this one is the next oldest map of America that I know of. This is about 4,000 years old. It's the oldest known of a bunch of ones that are all called the Book of Two Ways, or they're part of the Book of Two Ways. They're painted inside coffins in one of the gnomes, either the hair gnome or the hare gnome or something, and at Hermopolis, the city of Thoth. And I think these were the people of Thoth who were the experts on America. That's why Hermes and Thoth were so associated with the underworld. Because I think, the planet Mercury spends a lot of time going down over the horizon and has an interesting path. So the people that studied it and worshipped it as Hermes or Thoth or Odin or whatnot, they possibly Enki, they they were familiar with America because the planet and its course was associated with America, and I think it was used in navigation to America. So the people of Mercury of Thoth were the people who seem to have been in charge of studying America and mapping it. So this is the oldest one. The map you can see, comparing it here, Hernomark Jehudi Noch's map and the Orthograph world map, which won Japan's highest design accolade, the Good Design Award, for being one of the most precisely proportional maps in existence. And it has a relatively accurate shape of Greenland, unlike a lot of modern maps, maybe most modern maps that are closer to the Mercator projection, which severely distort the shape and size of Greenland, whereas this map is much closer to the reality and much closer to, if you can see here, the small black kind of semicircle, which seems to represent Greenland in this map. And this seems to be Florida. This seems to be, the Western Canada and California, Western US, Western Mexico. But a lot of the other parts of this, they messed up because they were copying the earlier 5,500-year-old maps without realizing that they were antipodal maps that were viewing America from underneath, so that the two coasts were flipped east to west. And so, they seem to have combined that map with, or at least that model of a map with another map or other maps that were from a bird's eye view, or maybe from their own exploration, portraying it from a bird's eye view. So this is an awkward attempt to try and reconcile the two opposite models, because they did not realize that the original was simply flipped. You know, this shows like the hills that are associated with like the horizon, Mesopotamia and Egypt, and possibly in Mexico here. And so here's a later version. This is from the Book of the Dead of Ani, from about 3,500 years ago or so. And so this shows Ani, you know, that's the deceased whose tomb it was in. And Ani is like traveling to the underworld, to America. And then here's America. Here's North America, South America, and this seems to be either Cuba or Hispaniola, and then this is this might be like I don't know, Galapagos or something. And you know, whichever is the bigger of the Galapagos Islands, I forget the name. And then this part may represent, I mean, yeah, it may represent the Gulf of Mexico. It seems like it's not actually showing the full thing. So from this line, you know, these lines are cutting it off. So, you know, it's not saying this is the whole thing, but it's giving just a zoom in on a part of it, which is around the Isthmus of Panama, and the northern part of South America, you know, like Venezuela here, and then North America here, but we can't really see much of it because it's just zooming in. The underworld map in the Papyrus of Ani, a book of the dead, book of going forth by day. And so this is actually the first map that I've discovered. You know, like when I saw this, that's when I first confirmed. I already suspected that the underworld was America, because that's what you know, the Vedic traditions and people from that tradition they've still remembered that, and they still teach that, you know, like I learned that from them. And so I just applied it to Egypt, and I searched for evidence of it until I eventually found this map, and that's what led me to the rest of it. But this is kind of a later version of the Book of Two Ways, but it's the Book of the Dead. That's the most famous Book of the Dead in the world, the Book of the Dead of Ani. I think, from what I've seen, it's like one of the first ones, might be the first one that was ever like translated. So my mouse is screwed up too, so I can't even. But this shows the Hieropolitan map, the 5,500-year-old one, and it shows that there's the same type of boats that are painted on it. So these boats are, you know, very significant and very ancient tradition, obviously. And there's a friend of mine was recently trying to argue with me and say that Egyptians were white, or you know, like the ancient Egyptians were white, or the pharaohs were white, or something like this. And he was trying to say I was cherry picking when I sent him like actual paintings of Egyptians. But anyway, for anybody who wants to know, like, these are the Egyptians. They were not white. Sorry. Not sorry. Cry more. Fragile ass snowflakes. So then, I don't know, dude. I can't even scroll, so I don't know how to do this. See, here's art from Catalhoyuk in Turkey. This might be like 9,000 or 8,000 years old. I'm not exactly sure. Neolithic site. And these are Mexican codices, Mexican books. So it shows like this idea of going to the underworld as falling down the stairs, like the stairs being like the levels of the world, falling down to the underworld. And I think these X's here also represent the flipping of the directions in the underworld. So, you know, you have these same type of upside down figures. Also in the underworld, you're upside down, you know, like gravity is upside down. So that's another significant part of this. This may have also related to excarnation, you know, the sky burials. So, and then here's like falling down to the underworld, falling down here, down the stairs the same way in this Mexican, like kind of like a pyramid, but pyramids were representative of the earth. And then here falling down a tree, which I think is the same type of thing, like Yggdrasil or whatever. Motifs likely relating to the descent to the underworld. Here's Apophis, also called Apep, who is like the foe of Re, or like blocks Re's path, but also seems to relate to water. So he may be, you know, like it's basically he's basically represented as water. So even though his head here is like an obstacle, his body is like the conduit, because that's what they're sailing on. And then this is Anubis, maybe Canis major and minor, seen as pulling the sun, you know, going ahead to the underworld. You know, that's why there's always like the dogs associated with the underworld, you know, Cerberus, and like the dogs of Yama in like Hinduism and Buddhism, and maybe Zoroastrianism. And you know, there's the dogs in Celtic tradition, like every tradition. It's like, oh, and Xolotl is the Aztec version of Anubis, basically. This is Okeanos, where we get the word ocean from. So the ocean was seen as a serpent god who enveloped the world and separated the world from the underworld, the world being Afro-Eurasia and the underworld being America. So here's a book of two ways. You can see again, here's Greenland, the black semicircle, and can see a little bit of the rest here. There's not like a defined Floridian peninsula here, but you can see like Western Canada there, Caribbean down here. Book of two ways. So here's the one from the Papyrus of Ani, like compared to the map. So, you know, I was thinking maybe this little sliver might be this, like the Galapagos type thing, and then this one might be Cuba there. And, you know, this, I talk about the Nordic health spells, like that in The Road to Hell by Hilda Roderick Ellis, and just talks about how, you know, there's these hymns, that spells are basically like hymns that you sing, and, you know, it's the same thing in like Egypt or in the Nordic tradition. It's all the same. It's not necessarily the same hymns, but it's the same concept. These spells to help you travel to America. But a lot of it, I think, is just to help you memorize the way. Here's the Hierakonpolis Tomb 100 map. It's like Florida here, Baja, Gulf of Mexico, Yucatan, when it was much, all the coastlines were larger because this is from like closer to the Ice Age. And this is this square that's north of the map section in the Book of Two Ways, and may represent the four kind of it may represent like the course of the sun and like the four sides of the earth. Here it talks about this Osiris has seen the one who went forth against Mot, fallen through the hands of the ones whose shapes are sacred, who are in the midst of the sacred lake, the confederates or the unifiers, the reed dwellers, the lords of the lake of rushes. So that may mean America, that the ones whose shapes are sacred would be like the different islands and peninsulas that are delineated as guardians of America. This is Thoth, who seems to be the planet Mercury, and this is a deity that may be also Mercury, I'm not sure, but this is in I believe an Aztec codex. Yeah, Codex Vaticanus B. I think this is usually described as a singer of Hathor, like a hymnist of Hathor, carrying a like rattle, like a sistrum of Hathor. And then this is described as a priestess, generally described as a priestess of, I think, Xochiquetzal in the Aztec tradition, and also carrying a rattle, but this one is shaped as a bird. And these rattles actually that look exactly like this have been found in Mexico. See, this has to do with fire. These are snakes representing something fiery. And this is the protagonist, the deceased. In this case, it's actually might be Seti or something. It's a pharaoh. This is on a tomb wall. And he's kind of becoming, I think he tends to be like that as the protagonist passes each deity, he becomes that deity in order to gain passage and in order to ward off any potential harm from that deity. So here he basically has become like serpentine, or in the shape of his body is so thin like a snake. And again here in this Mixtec Codex Zeuxnadal of Oaxaca, presumably in Mexico, it's the same thing. Here's probably the king or whoever, and then these are these fiery snakes, fiery snake gods, and this was probably done as rituals as well. So there were probably priests that would dress like this, and then they would surround the king or whoever. Um, so here again is the coffin of Jehudi Nacht, the gnome lord of the hair gnome. And this is the oldest known book of two ways that contains a map of America. And it's about 4,000 years old. This is a later one that actually depicts a lot of the deities that are only written as text on this map. Like this map has a lot, many or most of those same deities, but they're just written in hieroglyphs, their names and locations. And maybe they had their actual shape in a separate papyrus or something, papyri. Whereas in this one version, at least, and I think a couple others, they actually painted their shape right onto the map. So you can see, Baja California here, obviously. You can see Newfoundland is here, and it's actually is shaped like a rabbit like that, even though it's pointed the other direction. But just for the sake of this stylization, they make all of them to be standing, with west as up, and also facing towards whichever coastline they are the guardian of. So that's why he's flipped around here, because he guards, Quebec and Hudson Bay. Then this is Cuba. Here, the Long Island, shown as a long snake-like deity. And then Hispaniola next to it, which is a little more squat or whatever. And then you can see here like the Amazon River, and the Falklands. And oh yeah, here's the Alaskan Peninsula there. And this is a reproduction, so they made a lot of this more clear, but they screwed up the shape of Greenland. Like this shape of Greenland in this one is a lot more accurate, whereas this one screws it up, just like the Mercator projection. But it has the Baffin Island, which is pretty accurately placed there. And yeah, such is the such, and the rest of this is all other stuff. These are these things are waterways, except for this. This is waterways, and there's like the Chesapeake region, so it also includes the Palmyra, or basically the peninsula that Delaware is on. The coffin of General Seppi, B1C, and a satellite map of America. So Sherbini just talks about the map section and how, how it should be treated as a map, basically, of locations and like localities with different, topographical features, because it clearly is. All right, so yada yada. Let's see how far in I am in this video. All right, so have a little bit more time, I'll just finally get into the map section itself. So Greenland contains the text, "The entrance of the lake. This is the gateway of darkness." That fits Greenland as being a place which is dark much of the year and likely relates to the tradition about the sunset extinguishing Ray's light until he is resurrected inside his shrine in the underworld at Egypt's midnight, ready to shine again on the eastern hemisphere for the next day. This wasn't a literal belief, at least by the adept, but a cosmological device and a mythological device which tend to overlap. Due to this tradition, the eastern coastline of America is a thick black line, and Greenland is a solidly black semicircle, while the western coastline of America is blue. And also the western coastline's localities were represented in white in the early ones and red in later ones. This dichotomy represents night and day, darkness and sunshine. This implies that both lines represent water, and the eastern sea is black for lack of sunshine. Sherbini writes, "In the course of our translation of the texts of our composition, we will use the conventional renderings of the word rurt, such as gate, gateway, or gate hall. This brings to mind the etymological connection between hell and hall, which have the same basic meaning and origin. In Nordic tradition, there are 9 hells, which are accessed by traveling northwest, like the route described by Plutarch to Iceland and Greenland and onward to America." So, it's different words they use, like they use rurt but that's like the ancient Egyptian for hell, which is also means hall, like, like gate hall. And the shrine, like Ray's shrine where he's reborn, is in America. It either is America itself, or it's at least relates to this quote unquote lake of fire or river of fire that runs north to south through America, and it seems to especially relate to the Gulf of Mexico, where there's a specific spell or a specific text saying that he's arrived at the shrine, and that's where he's like reborn. And then he seems to be the sunrise seems to be specifically over northwest Mexico, and because this area is associated with Apep, who's tries to block Ray. Two straight-edge shapes to the north of North America are labeled fire, and in later versions, the eastern one is labeled gateway of fire. Sherbini writes of these two sections, "The color of the representations of the gates is white in the early sources and red in the late ones. In B1C, that extends from the eastern coast of Greenland to the eastern edge of the map, and northward to the eastern corner of the northern rectangle of the entourages of the fire." So that's the square that's north of the map. And the western one is north of Alaska and western Canada, connected by 2 red lines to the red lake of fire, and it extends north to the western corner of the northern rectangle and west to just shy of the edge of the map. The fire labels likely relate to the sun, and these eastern and western fire shapes likely are or relate to sunset and sunrise, respectively. For the positive connotation of fire, and to the degree that the officiant hopes to be identified with it, see chapter Jacques Voyage, one of the pertinent notes. Baffin Island is depicted in B1C as a zoomorphic god with horns like those of a ram, and it is labeled "He who repels the demolishers." To the right is the text. This is an utterance for passing by him. So utterance and spell are the same, translated